Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Nuclear Revenge. In today's episode, Ms. Nice Girl has left the building. My grandmother almost killed my mother's first fiancé. Try to strong-arm evict me illegally? We'll see about that. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Ms. Nice Girl has left the building. First, I need to explain something. I seem like a very nice, laid-back, easygoing person, so most people make the mistake of thinking I'm a spineless wimp they can take advantage of. Operative word there is seem. In point of fact, I have a vicious, vindictive temper. I'm just emotionally lazy. I don't like wasting time and energy on confrontation that can more profitably be spent elsewhere. However, if you mess with my family or my money, very bad things will happen to you. As my mom liked to say, Ms. Nice Fancy has left the building and you don't want to meet the other fancy. Example follows. This happened about 20 years ago. I started working as a CAD drafter for a small drafting and design firm, practically fresh out of college. I made a good salary, not great but comfortable. Very soon, I found myself the drafter, receptionist, office manager, file clerk, and even janitor when I needed to pick up a little extra money. My boss was almost never in the office, because I was there to handle everything. After a year of being general factotum, on Friday, April 13th, my boss comes to me and tells me he doesn't have my income tax paperwork ready but has a reasonable excuse, and he asks me to file an extension. I told him, this is kinda last minute, don't you think? But okay, I'll do it, and I did. Every couple of weeks afterward, I'd ask him about my tax paperwork, and he'd tell me no, not yet, and umpteen excuses why not. Finally, he told me his lawyer had them and was finishing preparing them, and would be ready any day. Really? I did wonder why his lawyer was working on them instead of his accountant, but I didn't say anything. My tax extension would be up on Sunday, July 15th, so I had to turn my taxes in by Saturday, July 14th. On Friday, July 13th, about 5 p.m., I was sitting in my office chatting with my mom, who was there to give me a ride home. My boss came into my office and had the gall to ask me to file another tax extension, and gave me some totally bogus excuse. You see, what he didn't know was, I had found all my tax paperwork on his computer a few weeks before, just needed to be printed out and signed off. So I knew then he'd been lying his $1 off this whole time. I remember staring at him for a few moments, absolutely dumbfounded, then smiling and saying okay. My mom told me afterward, when she saw me smile at him like that, she thought, OSH, Fancy's gonna kill this guy and I don't know if I can stop her. I'm sure he wishes that's all I had done to him. First thing Monday morning, I walked straight up to my boss and dropped my resignation on his desk. He's like WTH, and tried to argue. Me, I don't argue, I just told him, I'm leaving, do you want me to work my notice? He said, hell no. Get your stuff and get out, which was another huge mistake, in a long line of them. Because I left and went straight to the IRS office, where I gave up all the goods on this guy. He apparently never actually paid any of my taxes or his, though he did take it out of my pay and I had proof. It so happens, before he was a CAD drafter/designer, he was a CPA who left that field under a cloud. The IRS was not happy to hear his name again. Everybody knows, you do not mess with the IRS. Not content with that, I then contacted all of his business associates and told them what he had done, that he was being investigated by the IRS, and if they didn't want to be too, they might want to steer clear. I didn't tell his wife, whom I was on very good terms with, but only because I wanted him to have that pleasure. Just picture that conversation. OMG, why did she leave? She did everything. Well, I'm very sure she heard ALLL about it from his associates. I will give him this, he was stubborn, he managed to hang on to his business for about a year of living hell, before going under. But I smirked every time I went by his empty office. Edit, to clarify, I never printed the tax paperwork from his computer, it honestly never occurred to me to do so. I used my own records of what I was paid and what tax was taken out of my salary to go to the IRS with. Since it was all in his handwriting, they accepted it. I was really just trying to give this guy the chance to do the right thing right up to the end. Or hang himself, whichever. My grandmother almost killed my mother's first fiancé. My grandmother told me this story and I wanted to share. This all happened in 1985, so this was before security cameras were a household thing, plus this happened in bumfuck Georgia. My grandmother, Clara, told me that when my mom, Angela, turned 19 she got engaged to a man, Dick, his actual name by the way. Clara noticed that he was very controlling, i.e. she couldn't use a phone, the landline, and he forbid her from going to family events. Clara's final straw was when my mom called her in the middle of the night crying, saying she couldn't do it anymore and that he had been beating her. By this point, they had been together for almost 2 years and had my older brother. Clara told my mom to go to my great-grandfather's house and stay there, but tell Dick that she was going to her house. My mom did as she was asked and Clara waited for him. He eventually came in the middle of the night yelling that Angela needed to come home and stop acting like a child. Clara told Dick that she was inside. He went in and Clara came in behind him and hit him over the head with a bat that she had set beside the inside of the door. Dick fell to the floor and Clara hit him several times in the legs and arms, breaking one of his arms and fracturing a rib. When she was done, she told him to never come near her daughter or he would be in a ditch next. He never came back. Pretty sure he burned my mom's stuff, but she didn't care. Try to strong-arm evict me illegally? We'll see about that. This happened back in 2010 when I lived in Winter Garden, Florida, with my husband and his dying uncle. Background: my husband and I moved in with his sick uncle after losing so much during the 2008 housing market crash in the US, like many of my husband's lawn maintenance customers. We also moved in with his uncle into a condo because his uncle had stage 4 cirrhosis of the liver, and his self-entitled sister and her family refused to help take of him. My husband, a retired Seminole County Sheriff's officer, important later, and I got ourselves set in the condo's 2 bedrooms as his uncle had himself set up in the living room, including his bed. On the first day, we found dangerous black mold caused by a leaky dishwasher. On the second day, we found the master shower had loose tiles and a leaky showerhead. On the third day, we found a nest of brown recluse spiders in the living room. We talked with his uncle about these problems and found out that the slumlord, friends with self-entitled sister/aunt and her family, was refusing to take care of the issues as required by law. We wanted to start legal actions then, but my husband's uncle talked us out of it several times. The slumlord was nice to us so long as my husband's sick uncle was alive. The very next day after my husband's uncle died was a completely different story. Slumlord had turned nasty, aggressive, and began to try and strong-arm evict us like we were nothing more than drug addicts, squatters. Slumlord even bowed up and aggressively tried to fight my husband when we dropped off our next rent check. He kept telling us that we had to move or else, but yet refused to follow actual FL laws to evict us. Slumlord and his corrupt Winter Garden PD code enforcement officer wife even recruit my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle to start harassing about just moving even if we had to live in a tent. Self-entitled aunt, why don't you and my RSO nephew just move so they can rent the condo to another senior? Husband, we don't have anywhere else to go yet, and he must go through eviction laws or get into very serious trouble. Self-entitled aunt, you're nothing but trouble, retired SCSD officer nephew. You've been problems since the day you were born. Get out of their condo and stop being a problem for everyone. Who cares if you have to live in a tent? All of this made my retired SCSD officer husband, who specialized in uncovering corrupted law enforcement, very suspicious. We talked and began investigating slumlord and corrupt code enforcement wife. My first order was to place all rent into escrow with evidence of repairs that have been neglected. Second, I sent a notification of cease and desist of harassment to the slumlord and self-entitled aunt. Next, I researched public property tax records. Woohoo! Pay dirt there. Slumlord's condo wasn't registered as a rental property with the state of FL and was paying far less in property taxes than Slumlord should have been paying. Property tax records also showed that Slumlord did not own the condo. It was still deeded to his mother, which I found out had been living in a retirement home for 5 years before my husband's uncle moved in. My husband found out that corrupt code enforcement wife had been inspecting and signing off on hers and Slumlord's properties, including the condo, which is against FL code enforcement conduct laws. I found out from neighbors in the condo that Slumlord had only been renting to seniors with severe health issues. My best discovery, though, next to tax evasion, was finding out that the Condo Owners Association had a very strict no renting/leasing policy, meaning you or family had to live in the condo and couldn't be rented. The revenge. Now that we had all of our evidence, my husband and I began to knock down all of the slumlord's dominoes. My husband went and filed a complaint with the Winter Garden Police Department about corrupt code enforcement wife and her perjuring inspections on her family properties. My husband has a glowing record in Seminole County and with the FDLE for having over 200 clean arrests and taking down nearly 60 corrupt public officials, including Child Protective Services, in the early 2000s. This background helped push WGPD to open an investigation into corrupt code enforcement wife. They discovered that not only had she perjured inspections on her family's properties but also on my husband's self-entitled aunt and uncle's property as well. This got corrupt code enforcement wife fired, stripped of her state enforcement officer's license, and convicted of multiple crimes. I sent all property tax fraud evidence to the FL's Property Tax Division. That got the state to investigate Slumlord. The state found that not only did he commit property tax fraud on the condo but also on a property that he was renting to his son and self-entitled aunt's son, along with business tax fraud and income tax fraud. Both Slumlord's son and self-entitled aunt's son were also busted for possession of illegal narcotics with intent to sell when investigators came to the rental house they lived. I never expected that much fraud to be found from all of this, but I'm glad it happened. The business tax fraud of Slumlord affected self-entitled aunt and self-entitled uncle as well, since they were his business partners. Self-entitled uncle then came under investigation by the USPS board as he was the postmaster of Winter Garden. Self-entitled uncle lost his comfy job and pension after it was discovered how he was assisting Slumlord in the tax fraud scam and for stealing money orders. All four were convicted of multiple white-collar crimes, had to sell their properties and most of their stuff, serve some form of time, and pay huge amounts of fines and restitution. Slumlord, his wife, hubby's self-entitled aunt, and hubby's self-entitled uncle, along with their sons, all went down for multiple crimes, both felonies and misdemeanors, all because they thought they could strong-arm evict us. Just proves how smart we tenants can really be when pushed. Also proves why everyone should know all rental laws and how to research public records, because it can save you in the end. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.